I received an excellent listener question, which is, do you think that wanting something so badly actually blocks us? And the reason I love this question is that it's very, very deep and it touches on some of the main teachings in society that I happen to believe that are a little bit more complex than what is disseminated. So the short answer is sometimes yes and sometimes no. But let's walk through it together. What is desire? Desire is wanting. Where does desire come from? Desire comes from, oftentimes, a lack of or a contrast experience. Here's what I mean. I had this aha moment sometime, 3 months ago, and I made a separate podcast on a different channel of mine, literally called The Nature of Desire, where I talk about this epiphany. The epiphany I had was observing my little baby and realizing that at first there was no desire at all. It was just unconscious sleepiness and reflexes. Yes, there is some mechanism in the brain that will relay the arms to move in a particular orientation around the ear or sometimes around the mouth, and there's a sequence. It's predictable, it's stereotypic, is what we would call it in scientific terms. It's so predictable that the hospital puts up photos of babies doing this to train mothers so mothers know the signs for hunger. And there's a graduation effect where the gestures and the reflexes become more and more pronounced before the baby cries. And what I found so striking is that whenever I saw this gesture, I was like, I'm going to be a good mom. I'm going to go and feed my baby. But I would feed her too early, meaning before there was the cognizant awareness that she was hungry, it was like this was the pre-signal to me, hey, I'm getting hungry. I thought it was, I'm hungry now. This is under the level of desire. This is a reflex that every baby has. And then at some point in their development cycle, in your development cycle, you became desirous. Before that point, your mother could sit you down, could put anything on you, could set you in a room, and you were just totally content like a little potato. You were just happy to exist, and then you would fall back asleep. And when desire comes online, it is very interesting because all of a sudden, you display movement. You display autonomy, independence, choices, willpower. Willpower comes online a little bit later. But the very first thing is desire. And without desire, we would be invalids. So now fast forward in our society, a lot of teachers will say to desire something, you should eliminate desire. I disagree with this. Fundamentally, our species is designed to have desires, to have motivation. And it starts with wanting something that is out of reach. And so then the hand starts to go for it. But there's not the motor pathway that's really developed of intentional movement. Before this happens, arms and hands will move, but it's sort of like just a reflex. Like if you have Tourette's, it's just movement that is blind, unconscious, and in a deep part of the brain. And then you build the motor pathways from the cortex, from the top part of the brain to that deep part of the brain. And I do have expertise on this. I studied this in my PhD. And what ends up happening, or I study the motor pathways. I have to be very precise if I'm going to pull out my scientist card. I studied other things related to the motor pathway, not what I'm teaching right now, but I understand how it works. And so what happens is that you have to make those connections of intentional movement. And this, I believe, does not happen without desire. Isn't that beautiful? Our world exists because people desired, and they desired a lot. Hunter and gatherer societies, if they didn't have a strong desire, we would have died out a long time ago. In fact, I found it very interesting to learn that our current present society that was built by the early capitalists at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, they get a bad rap. I understand why, but they existed in the wild, wild west, right? And Mr. Rockefeller, for example, was so poor as most people were at that time. We're talking food starved, right? Having to live on a farm, famines, disasters, mudslides. Oh no, they took that out of history. I don't know about that. Anyway, so life was really, really rough then. And it was through this strong desire that he was able to manifest himself as one of the richest people for his time. So it is not that desire is inherently wrong or evil. It's not that desire is the problem, because desire is advantageous to us. It's how you get everything done in your life. The desire could be not to fail. It could be to succeed. Those are different. It could be to stay small and to stay safe. To protect yourself from what? From success? Because you don't trust yourself? You see, we have to unpack where the desire is rooted in. And this is why I love this question, because it's actually very, very complex. Our psychology as human beings are so incredibly beautifully complex. I love it. It's like a puzzle. We all have a puzzle inside of us. And what happens is that we have our attention focused on desire as the point of elimination. So people will say, you need to not desire. You need to eliminate your desires. You need to be non-attached, right? Sometimes, yes. Especially if you are like a dog with a bone and you are obsessive and you're like, this is the only way. And depending on which reality layer you're anchored into, this can actually be detrimental because it creates resistance around you, and it creates a tunnel vision, and it creates a rigidity in your mind of this is how things should be because of that strong desire. And what ends up happening is that, let's say you are impoverished, for example, and just a random example, and you are really, really desiring to get out of poverty. And so you imagine that, I got a question about this from a different listener, that the way to do this is to win the lottery. And so you want to manifest a reality layer where you've won the lottery. And you spend all of your energy and all of your focus on winning the lottery. The problem is that there are so many other ways to become wealthy and abundant, that when you zero in like that, you create resistance because you tell the universe, this is the only way I will accept. And it just so happens to be infinitesimally, probabilistically small. So you end up working against yourself. And where this becomes pathological resistance is when the universe tries to help you, right? And let's say in this particular example, that the universe tries to send you somebody new in your life for a collaboration. And this collaboration, from the universe's perspective, sees that it is destiny in the making. From the eyes of the cosmos, when we zoom all the way out, we see that that collaboration actually is like winning the lottery. But it happens in a way and a time that that individual doesn't see and doesn't expect. But because they are so focused on this is the only way, they miss the opportunity. And that person that comes into their life is like, hey, let's grab some coffee, let's meet up, and they're just like, because they're also disconnected from their intuition. This is why being in tune with your intuition is very important, because it acts as almost like it'll help you when your mind is rigid, because you'll get these little nudges like, I should really follow up with them. I should really take them up on their offer. I should really hear them out, even though you're not considering it because you're going off in a different direction. And so when you're also disconnected from your intuition and you're just mindlessly plowing forward, this is the goal, this is the plan, this is the outcome, this is what I want, then you create so much resistance in your life that everything fails. And you might lose faith, you might get angry, you might give up on everything, and that would perpetuate a conscious narrative, consciousness trap about the nature of things. Your explanation for why things don't work is contingent upon this rigid perspective of how things should work, because you perceive where you're at in space and time that the only way to have an overnight success is by playing the lottery. And you don't really want to work and grind it out for 50 years to get the pension that doesn't exist anymore. There's no shame in that. You feel like it should be easy. Maybe that's because there's a part of your soul that is rejecting the systems that are outdated, that are telling you it's supposed to be hard and it's supposed to look like this. And if it doesn't look like this, then your only alternative is to win the lottery. That's not true anymore. Isn't that beautiful? But when you are attached to the system reflection of what society has told you before, then the maps that you're using to construct reality and shift reality are actually limited. And we're trying to break away from the limitations, right? So we need to zoom out and look at the constructs of thought patterns from an individual and a collective point of view. And we need to understand, why is this particular attachment to this outcome coming into play? Why is this desire rooted here? This is what I do in my one-on-one reality shifting coaching. By the way, we get to the root of your blocks and your desires, and we try to understand why things have not been working for you. Anyway, so one way that desire is actually advantageous is that desire is the precursor to motivation. Think about that for just a moment. You can have a little bit of desire. Like right now, I have a little bit of a desire for my evening snack, which right now I'm obsessed with yogurt parfait. I get unsweetened yogurt. I put real natural honey, not the corn syrup stuff that's in the supermarket. What is up with that? How is that legal anyway? And then I put some fresh fruit. It's either mango, tonight it's pineapple, not from a can. I actually cut up the fruit that comes off of a tree. We've gotten so far off base with our food, I just don't understand it. But some places it's good. I'm not knocking on canned food. Canned pineapple is also okay. Anyway, and then I put some granola on it. But tonight I'm going to put some pomegranate seeds in there too. So I have this inkling of a desire, but it's not strong enough right now to compel me to put down this recording. And in fact, I am prioritizing this recording over having that snack. Why is that? That's because the desire isn't strong enough to affect my behavior. The desire right now isn't strong enough to motivate me to prioritize that. Most nights, I actually have the yogurt before I make the recordings, just so you know. So when we understand the power of desire is really to keep us from being invalids and to keep us fed and happy, we see that desire as an emotion actually is critical to our well-being, because it is the absence of food, it is the absence of happiness, it is the absence of wealth or whatever it is that creates this feeling that we want to engage with the world differently. Nobody's saying you need to live like a pauper and be happy with it. Nobody's saying that. You deserve the life of your dreams. Is it always possible? It's not always possible. Most of the time it is. Sometimes there are things that are outside of your control. But where desire is powerful is that it pushes you into action. And this creates the catalytic energy that you need to change things in your life. You can kind of want things all day long, and in fact, a lot of people live in this state of kind of wanting things. But when you really want something, when you're like, no, I'm going for it, then you shift into your active masculine and your conquering energy. You're like, I'm gonna go get it. I'm not talking about cavemen putting women on your back and taking them off to your domicile. I'm not saying that we're doing that. What I'm saying is that, let's say you really want to be in venture capital as a career path, and you know that it's mostly closed. So you're in your 20s, you start making the connections now because you know that this is an end game career move and that it's really, really tricky to get into. So you start it now. You start planting those seeds, you make those connections, and as you get closer and closer to the end of your career or after your entrepreneurial great grand exit, then you start putting more irons in the fire. Alternatively, let's say you really want to go to X school, or you really want to get X job, or you really want to have a divine union. Then that propels you to investigate what is missing, what type of applications you need, how you need to better yourself as a candidate to be able to make yourself more attractive. So you start building yourself, right? And then you start going for it. You find the magnetism in somebody, and that propels you to go and introduce yourself. You reach out to the company that you want to work for. They have no open positions. You say, let me do an internship. Let me volunteer. whatever it is, you create. You see how that puts you in the energy of creation? You create something that presently doesn't exist. That comes from desire. That is, in fact, how you manifest your way in the world. It is actually an integral part of manifestation, because I remember when I was starting on this journey and I was still in my hermit phase, and I kept wanting certain opportunities to manifest in my life, but I never left my house. And so I had this moment of realization where I was like, wait a second. If manifestation is true, and I really do believe that it is, then the way that I'm opening doors in my life is that it's going to have to be an Uber Eats driver. Funny story. I don't have time to go into it, unfortunately, but there was an Uber Eats driver connection, a soul connection that came to me in Costa Rica, but that was a very odd scenario and didn't really go anywhere. But so it can happen. It's either got to be an Amazon delivery person, an Uber Eats driver, or somebody at my local gas station or pharmacy, because that's the only places that I would go and interact with people. And so it really opened my eyes to the fact that we have to create the space to allow for opportunities to come to us. And so then I started going to meetup groups, I started getting out there, and I started circulating in the world. And lo and behold, all of a sudden, I started having opportunities come to me. Kind of remarkable, right? And so having that understanding that that is the fuel that actually generates your reality, especially if you are a generator or a manifesting generator. Like, desire is really, really important for you to understand and to not get carried away with, but to understand the root of it. And very often, desire is strongly associated with the negative feelings. So it pulls down what should be a neutral to positive emotion, and it pulls it down to the negative vibrations because of the embedded contrast experience that it is packaged with. Like, it only arises when that toy is out of your reach. And that's how you move. That's how you learn how to move, is when something is out of reach. It's beautiful to see how it starts and how it continues through our development. And so it's actually a neutral experience, but it is our feelings of having lack or our feelings of frustration that then get lumped in to this compound emotion that then people in society will shortcut and say the desire is the problem. I say sometimes yes and sometimes no. Thank you for such a great question. Listen, I am a reality shifting coach. It's actually much more than that. We really build, or try to build. I can't make promises for everybody. Not everybody is going to get there, and that's okay. And not everybody is a good fit. I'm not a good fit for everybody, and everybody's not a good fit for me. But if you think that we would resonate and we would vibe, and you're interested, really interested, meaning you have a strong desire to change your reality, and you really are serious about that, then please reach out to me. I would love to get to know you. You can email me at sacredjourneyproductions@gmail.com. Okay, we'll talk soon.